Good morning. Welcome to Jen Taub Live. For those of you who came over from my independent YouTube channel, thanks for making the journey. And for all of the friends of Mary Trump Media, thank you for joining me. Let's do this. Last night, Kamala Harris made her closing argument for the campaign. And I am convinced if I could vote for her another time, I would. But we know that is not lawful, even though folks will accuse so many of us of cheating. And that is where we are. We have 6 days left until November 5th. But that will not be the end of the story. I think you are well aware that if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz win next week, we will be facing a fierce and unfortunately bloody battle and all kinds of lawfare that Donald Trump and his supporters will engage in to try to once again overthrow the lawful results of an election and, of course, our democracy. But even worse than that is because he will not succeed. Even worse than that, though, my friends, is that if Donald Trump wins on Tuesday, I think we need to admit that the institutions did not hold. It's no longer going to be the story that our democracy is hanging by its fingernails. The story will be, it was a good run. And if we are going to say that the American experiment failed, will we start it up again? How will that look? How will we redesign our constitutional republic if we have that man who acts as if and seems to be above the law take control once again of the Oval Office? But I'm not going to despair quite yet, because I am still of the camp that we have got this, not just because Kamala Harris is an excellent candidate, but because of Donald Trump's arrogance and idiocies. And yes, my friends, I know that you may have heard me discuss this last night with Daniel Moody when we did the live stream of Kamala Harris's rally on the ellipse. You heard me say that it may come down to this. Nothing was too much for his supporters, and nothing was too much for people who were just going to go along and vote for him or third party until it happened on Sunday night when some person who claims to be a comedian, some dude named Tony, got up on stage and read his comments directly from the teleprompter, comments that were approved by the Trump campaign, and insulted Americans who live in Puerto Rico, calling Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. And that may be just the very thing that will clinch the election for Kamala Harris. And yes, things may be that close. But before we get to that, I want to talk about our lead topic, which is Donald Trump's crowd envy. Nothing will bother him more for the rest of his life than to know that Kamala Harris can draw and did draw larger crowds than he has ever assembled. Last night, based on her campaign and based on the rest of us with a sense of crowd size, mine that I get from, as I have mentioned, having been inside the Big House, Michigan Stadium for football games. I know what 100,000 looks like. And of course, we have seen, Madison Square Garden, which holds just under 20,000. And then you look at her crowd and you get the sense of the margins in her campaign. And there's no question that 75,000 people is an underestimate in my view. Now let's take a look at that crowd, because, that is the topic of today. We're going to talk about crowd envy, and we're going to talk about that closing argument. And what Kamala Harris promises more than anything for our country is unity and shared prosperity. Bottom line, of course, we have rule of law, imagine that, and hope for our future with a new generation of leaders. But I first want to talk about the thing that bothers Donald Trump the most, crowd size. Let's play this. Thank you. 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 Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So listen.
That's a pretty damn big crowd, you know. I'm sure that you have that same feeling. And when Donald Trump looked on television, and I'm sure that he did not miss it, he saw station after station after station playing her rally. And just to make that clear, let me show you. I'm only showing you 4. Here we go. On all of the TVs. Here we have on our upper left quadrant, Kamala Harris delivering her closing argument speech. MSNBC played it. Then we go to the right. Let's do this clockwise. CNN. Harris delivers closing argument of 2024 election. And I have BBC, U.S. election, final days of campaigning. And let's complete that circle. Holy moly, Fox News. Now Kamala delivers final pitch to voters. And let me just say this thing, because you may not realize this about Fox News. I think this is the most delicious treat of all. It's true. Fox News did cut away from their regularly scheduled programming, but you know who was on air on Fox News? Who was just set aside? Yes, it was Laura Ingraham. Poor Laura. Do you see? I'm crying on the inside for her and her hate mongering. Okay, so let's talk. I got several topics for you today. First, it was the rally last night. Second is some heartbreaking news out of Texas, reported by ProPublica, about yet another young woman who lost her life due to the failure of our country to elect Hillary Clinton for president. In other words, because Donald Trump became president, he was able to appoint Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe v. Wade. And now we have these Trump abortion bans. And as a result of that, we have yet another young woman who now left children orphaned, lost her life because of the Trump abortion ban in her state. And then my next topic, again, we've got last night's rally. We have this tragic story reported out by ProPublica out of Texas. And then we are going to talk about follow the money. I am not getting over the fact that Jeff Bezos, the billionaire oligarch who controls the Washington Post and is letting it die, not in darkness, but in a back smoky room of greed. We will talk about that. And then, of course, Crazy Town. Okay, so what do I think last night about the key takeaways? And there is a reason why I am saying this. I think Kamala Harris clearly was not just extending an olive branch to people who may not have supported her in the past, but she was speaking to all of us. She was speaking to all of us when she said, America and Americans love a great debate. We want to hash out the issues. We want to get to better resolutions of our problems and support our vision for the future and for upholding the values and rules in our Constitution. This is sort of fundamental of who we are. But those debates does not make us enemies. Those debates, quite honestly, what do they make us? They make us Americans. And for Donald Trump, he doesn't see it that way because he has learned to do what all tyrants do, which is to divide and conquer. He wins by pitting us against each other, but more than that, by enforcing a hierarchy of winners who will dominate losers. And in Donald Trump's world, it's quite simple. The winners are men and the losers are women. The winners in Donald Trump's world are white people, and the losers are anyone of color. In Donald Trump's world, the winners are his super rich friends, and the losers and the suckers are people who sign up for the military, and that is usually the middle class and poor. And the losers are the people who pay their taxes. We've heard him say that. Again, the winners are the people who cheat at the top. In Donald Trump's world, the winners are the dictators like Kim Jong-un who rule, and also President Xi of China, who rule with an iron fist. Those are his winners. And his losers are the subjects, all of us, He doesn't believe in we the people. He doesn't believe in a government of, for, and by the people. He believes in Donald Trump. That is what he believes in. And the most important part of this hierarchy that he is using to divide us is on a whim. On a whim, he will get retribution, and he shows you how bad it is to be on the bottom. He promises to make people leave this country who have the right to be here. He also wants to round up tens of millions of people and make them leave here. He wants to send them back to whatever country he decides they should go back to, anyone who is here undocumented. And that's not about keeping America safe. And that is not about supporting our economy. And that is not building out a future. That is about domination, because if he can make it really bad and really dangerous and very deadly and impoverishing for enough people, then he will instill fear in the rest of us. If he creates two Americas, where part of it is what his view, beautiful and gilded and wealthy and no care in the world, and then he shows you that everything else is garbage, you're going to want to get on the Trump train, and you are going to want to be one of his winners and not one of his losers. Okay, well, we don't need to fall for that. And that is why the two most important things I think Kamala Harris got across, the first, again, was the message of unity. Unity across different ideas, unity across debates, unity to move forward in this country. Number one important message. And I am going to show you first the language that she actually used herself toward that concept. Okay, so I think I actually have it. Here we go. Let's play this first clip.
Donald Trump has never understood is that e pluribus unum, out of many, one, isn't just a phrase on a dollar bill. It is a living truth about the heart of our nation. Our democracy doesn't require us to agree on everything. In fact, we like good arguments from time to time. Just think of your own family, right? It's not the American way to not have disagreements. We don't shy away from robust debate. In fact, we like a good debate, don't we? We like a good debate. And the fact that someone disagrees with us does not make them the enemy within. That's right. They are family.
That's right.
Neighbors, classmates, co-workers. They are fellow Americans. And as Americans, we rise and fall together.
I love this.
America, for too long, we have been consumed with too much division, chaos, and mutual distrust.
Here we go.
And it can be easy then to forget a simple truth. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It is time to stop pointing fingers. We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next President of the United States of America.
I get the chills again watching that. To me, that is the rhetorical and moral center of this, of the rally last night, of her speech. Look at what she accomplished there. She talked about her vision. She talked about what it means to be an American, and she drew the contrast. We are not each other's enemies. This was a speech for the ages. And friends, it's not just me noticing that. And it wasn't just Danielle and I just almost fainting. when we heard that. This idea, it was the first thing Danielle Moody said last night. It's about not pointing fingers. It's about locking arms. And this reminds me of, I have to say, there's something, I believe it was something Gloria Steinem, I only read recently, said. She was a leader of the feminist movement, one of the leaders of the feminist movement of the 70s. I think they call that, is that second wave, third wave? I don't know which wave. Anyway, that particular movement. And she said something that made sense to me, and it resonates because of what Kamala Harris just said. She said that we are linked, not ranked. When you think about that, when you think about being linked and not ranked, we can work together so much better. And that is essentially what Kamala Harris said, but even stronger. Let's stop pointing fingers. Let's stop looking around and blaming, and let's lock arms toward the future together. Love it. Now, again, not just me. I saw this. I saw this elsewhere, so I'm going to play for you right after the debate. While Danielle Moody and I were on this station, others were elsewhere, corporate media, and here is MSNBC. I just love this. Let's play it.
Quite a speech last night. The visuals were incredible. The speech itself was really trying to reach out to all Americans at the most perhaps divisive time in modern American history.
Well, and what matters the most to Donald Trump, crowd size. The crowd size was absolutely massive. I mean, I could not believe what I was looking at. It was just absolutely, the people just came flooding in support of Kamala Harris. And I will say, in contrast to what Donald Trump has said, I thought it was compelling. I loved the message last night, and she kept going back to it, Willie. She kept going back to how people that disagree with her are not the enemy. She doesn't want to put them in jail. She wants to put them around the table and listen to them. She kept talking about finding common ground. She kept talking about compromise. She kept talking about being the president of all Americans, even those Americans who vote against her. And what a marked contrast. There's so many distractions in this campaign. Other news channels will get distracted with people who are not running in this campaign. What matters is what the two people who are running in this campaign are saying. And what they're saying right now is this, that for Donald Trump, if you oppose him, you're an enemy of America. You're an enemy from within. You're going to get arrested. And what Kamala Harris is saying is, I'm going to bring America together. I'm going to compromise. I'm going to forge consensus. And if you would disagree with me, you won't be on my enemies list. You'll be at my table, and we'll be talking about how to bring America together. And just so people don't think this is just some vague generality, she went right there with border crossings, illegal border crossings, securing the southern border. And what did she say? I will work with Republicans like James Lankford to pass his bill, a compromise bill, a tough bill that would have secured the southern border immediately.
Okay, Joe's being a little chatty, but this is the first takeaway others are feeling too. Now, I got one more person who talked about this as an olive branch. Now, keep in mind that close to just under, I think around 40 plus million people had already voted by the time last night's rally took place, by the time Kamala made her closing argument. But my friends, there are people who are still deciding. I swear to you. And they're good people. And they don't know quite what to do. And this makes all the difference in the world. So I'm going to play you this next piece about the olive branch that Harris was perceived to extend, a branch for peace. And of course, this is, for those of you who know biblical references, whether or not the Old Testament or the Christian Bible or what have you is gospel to you or narratives. We know the story of the olive branch, right? It comes from the floods, right? It comes from the story of Noah and this idea of being at sea, of not having dry ground in the olive branch when it is brought back to Noah's Ark by the dove, which of course is also a symbol of peace. When that olive branch is brought back, you know there must be dry ground. Where we have olive branches, we have olive trees growing. It is the possibility of prosperity and of rebirth. Now let's listen to this.
This was the antithesis of division. This was about contrast from division, common ground, common sense solutions, compromise. A lot of C words there, but they all add up to the fact that she's extending an olive branch to those undecided voters out there saying, I am the person that will make you feel comfortable. Another C word. And I think that this was incredibly important because a lot of people think that Kamala Harris herself is a divider. They have had an impression that she's too far to the left. This entire speech was about bringing people together. And I think one of the most powerful lines was, even if you disagree with me, and she said this twice, even if you disagree with me, I'm not going to jail you. I'm not going to send you off into oblivion, as she's alleging Trump might do to his enemies. I'm going to embrace you, and I'm going to have conversations with people that I disagree with. I think that that was one of the most important things she has said in the last 90 days for those people out there who are hesitant to pull the trigger for her.
She said,
I believe it. I know the proof is not in the polling. The proof will be in the voting and, of course, in the ultimately certifying of those votes. Now, I've spoken to you now about what I think was the lead message that people should take away from that speech. And I feel like I want to draw a contrast then, and then I'm going to move to the financial message. So allow me to draw this contrast. I'm going to show you first Kamala and then Donald from last night at a very sad, small arena that he could not even fill. Shockers.
I've lived the promise of America, and I see the promise of America in all of you. In all of you. I see it.
Okay. Right? I love that. And that was part of her speech last night where she had a litany of saying, I see this in you, and I see this, and I've seen this. And you felt, there's this expression that people want to feel seen. Well, America needs to feel seen. And let's just show you the contrast between the promise of America. What does Donald think?
It's like we're a giant garbage can.
Can I just play that one more time, guys? I mean, I got to do the contrast, okay? Let's just play this back to back because this is the closing argument. What do you want, America?
I've lived the promise of America, and I see the promise of America in all of you. In all of you. I see it.
And now Donald.
It's like we're a giant garbage can.
Very different worldviews, very different approaches. Donald doesn't actually think we're a garbage can. It's what I told you before. He wants to trash you. He wants to break you down so he can build you back up as a supporter of a fascist regime. He wants that hierarchy where there are the winners and the losers. There are the people who are beautiful and fragrant and rich and people he can dominate. And then there is garbage. That is the rest of us. And you never want to be garbage. I like Kamala Harris. You like Kamala Harris. You have seen the promise of America. We've had ups and we've had downs. No one's life has been perfect. But don't tell me this country is garbage. And speaking of calling the country garbage, we are still not over, as I began at the outset. And again, we're going to get to the money side of things in a second. But we are still not done with those comments from his Madison Square Garden rally. Okay. I know that you know that Tony Hinchcliffe was fully approved, known to be a racist, quote unquote, comic, someone who beats up on people he perceives to be less than and then laughs and calls it a joke. That's like tripping someone, they hit their head on the sidewalk and you laugh, right? No, that is not a joke. That is sadistic. And I think it's important to play for you that clip from Madison Square Garden now before we comment and before we pivot to the message about economic prosperity. But again, this fits into the first major takeaway. And I only have two because it's really two most important things. The first is the message of unity and contrasting that to Donald Trump's hatred of America and division. Let's play this Tony Hinchcliffe from Madison Square Garden.
Going on. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right.
Doesn't get better, doesn't ever get funnier. And Donald Trump is not backing away from that. He thinks it's no big deal. I swear to you. He was just talking about it, saying it was no big deal. So I think I have that clip. Actually, you know what? Better than that, I have people who are political analysts saying it's too late, even if he did not double down on that. Right. Donald Trump, this is what he said. He basically said it was like a love fest. It was a love fest, he claimed, his rally at Madison Square Garden. And I would like to know what kind of things they love. Do they love white supremacy? Do they love attacking fellow Americans? What exactly was he and everyone else in love with at that rally? Okay, so this is why it's too late. Again, his division doesn't work. Here we go.
Wondering, Victor, his campaign is going to feature Zoraida Buxo, the shadow senator from Puerto Rico. We've heard reports that other prominent Puerto Ricans are going to be joining him. What do you think about that? What do you know about who else might be going there?
I haven't heard of anyone else being there, but I'll tell you this. None of those people matter. It's all about number one. Until Donald Trump doesn't himself acknowledge the fact that this was wrong, that this is unacceptable, that we will not tolerate this, I don't think none of that matter. He can bring anybody he wants from Puerto Rico, and I've heard it from my audience. It's too late now. He needed to say something right away that night or the day before or the day after, and he hasn't done it. By now, he can bring anybody he wants from Puerto Rico, and it's not going to make a difference.
Okay, the principle matters. It's too late for Donald, and he will never, ever apologize. Okay, now let's pivot to the second message. And here's how Kamala Harris set it up. Economic prosperity, and even before we get to the shared prosperity in this country, the idea that things are too expensive. And not just the cost of things that we buy from the supermarket, right? Or the cost of health care for our elderly, not just, as she's talked about, the cost of taking care of a family member at home when you don't get Medicare reimbursement for their needs for that home care. She talks about that, of course. But at the heart of it, she talks about the cost of housing. And she underlined her plan to work with builders in the private sector to expand the housing stock. There aren't enough homes, and there aren't enough affordable homes. And it's kind of a basic supply and demand thing. She's talked about helping people with getting down payments. The way to have shared prosperity and to invest in our communities is to make the future possible for young people. You know, we know wages have not kept up with inflation, and the cost of housing is extremely high. It's hard to get your foot in the door. And at the same time, for those people for whom their entire nest egg is in their home, they're kind of glad that housing prices have gone up. We just need to spread that out and share that prosperity. So I want to share with you that part of the Harris speech about her priorities. Here we go.
Now, our biggest challenge is to lower costs, costs that were rising even before the pandemic and that are still too high. I get it. I still remember our mother sitting at that yellow Formica table, late at night, cup of tea in hand, a pile of bills in front of her, trying to make it all work. And I've heard from so many of you who are facing even greater financial pressures. Donald Trump's answer to you is the same as it was the last time. Another $1 trillion in tax cuts for billionaires and big corporations. And this time, he will pay for it with a 20% national sales tax on everything you buy that is imported. Think about it. Clothes, food, toys, cell phones. A Trump sales tax that would cost the average family nearly $4,000 more a year. And on top of that, you will pay even more if Donald Trump finally gets his way and repeals the Affordable Care Act, which would throw millions of Americans off their health insurance and take us back to when insurance companies had the power to deny people with pre-existing conditions. Well, we are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back because we also know Donald Trump would deliver tax cuts to his billionaire donors. I will deliver tax cuts to working people and the middle class. I will make sure you have a chance not just to get by, but to get ahead. Because I believe in honoring the dignity of work. I will enact the first ever federal ban on price gouging on groceries. Cap the price of insulin and limit out-of-pocket prescription costs for all Americans. I will fight to make sure that hardworking Americans can actually afford a place to live. I'll never forget how our mother saved up and how excited she was when she could finally afford to buy our first home. I remember how excited she was. And I know that owning a home is not only a measure of financial security, it's about the pride of your hard work. And as president, I will fight to help first-time home buyers with your down payment, take on the companies that are jacking up rents, and build millions of new homes. For years, we have heard excuses about why America can't build enough housing. Enough with the excuses. I'm going to cut the red tape and work with the private sector and local governments to speed up building and get it done.
You heard it. I think if there's anything you want to share with your friends about Harris's speech last night, it should be that clip. That is critical because the vibes and the reality that she loves America, that she sees our future compared to Donald Trump, treating us like a garbage can. Her message for unity is permeating. Everyone's going to hear that, but I'm not sure that all of your friends and family who are undecided understand that she is actually better on the economy than Donald Trump. That is the one category in polling that people are mistaken on. And if you don't believe me, or they don't believe me, ask Elon Musk. I don't know if you saw this, but he is now saying that if Donald Trump gets elected due to his cockamamie financial and economic plans for the country, we will suffer. We will suffer, Elon says, temporarily. Let me tell you, folks, Elon is the richest man in the world. He ain't going to suffer temporarily or ever. He is admitting that this is crap. This is a bad idea. It's a bad deal for all of us. They're admitting it. So let's look at the alternative. Share this. Now, one last thing before we talk about our two other stories. Remember the consequences of Donald Trump's abortion bans, as well as a quick follow the money story before we do Crazy Town. Okay, so Donald Trump, let's take a look at his little tiny crowd, in comparison to Harris's. Let's look at this. I think this arena seats 8,500, and I don't know, it wasn't full. And, I don't have to be a mathematician. I don't have to be, getting a master's degree in physics like my oldest child, Emily, or having been a calculus tutor in college, which I was not, and she was. Sorry, Emily, if you're listening, I'm boasting on you, to understand that 8,500 is less than 75,000. But let's just take a look at his sad, teeny crowd. I'm going to turn off that music because it's not very good, but it's also maybe copyright protected. So we're scanning this crowd. Maybe you can see it. I'm seeing a lot of empty seats. Let's just play that again. Here we go. This was his rally. Yeah. I don't know what his sign said. It should have said, "You are garbage." Okay. You are trash. I'm sorry, I should say that. Okay, that is him. And let's also just for the heck of it, let me just show you the Harris crowd because that is critical. Oh, wait, sorry. Before I show you the Harris crowd, this is the last piece of this. This is the part of Kamala Harris's speech where she reminds us that she is standing in the ellipse, that area where you have the White House behind you. It's right near it's right near the Capitol and the White House. And this is where Donald Trump had gathered his people at his Stop the Steal rally and told them then to go down to the Capitol and trash it. These are the people who were shouting, "Hang Mike Pence," right? And so she stood in her power in that place and reclaimed that space for all of us. And if he had 50,000 people there, she had 75,000. Let's show you that piece of it.
Look, we know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election.
Okay, we know that's where she is standing. Now, how about Donald Trump? He's not taking any of this well. Donald Trump is really freaking out about Michelle Obama. Yesterday was the second time, at least, that he publicly has called her nasty simply because she told the truth about who he was and implored voters, especially male voters, to step up and think about what this vote means for the women in their lives. And so here he was again, freaking out about Michelle Obama, who is now living rent-free in his very capacious and tidy brain because there's not much to store in there.
November 5th, what's nasty to me? Michelle Obama. She was, ooh. I always tried to be so nice and respectful. Oh, she opened up a little bit of a box. She opened up a little bit of something. Oh, she was nasty. Ooh.
That was the original. I'm sorry. That was not last night. That was the first time he got upset. I'm going to keep playing this.
Shouldn't be that way. That was a big mistake that she made. With you.
That was a big mistake that she made. Like he's in control of meting out the punishment. No, we will encircle Michelle Obama and protect her from your wrath. Yeah, forget it, Donald. But here he is again. And this is classic Donald Trump. It's like, I'm gonna play it for you and then tell you his formula if you haven't figured it out.
And I can't imagine it's a big deal. I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president I think that's ever been president. And I can't imagine it's a big deal. I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president I think that's ever been president.
Okay, I thought I was going to show you his latest attack on Michelle Obama, but this is Donald not responding. This is my last thing on him. This is him not responding to, or not apologizing, or not denouncing the comments made on the stage at Madison Square Garden that his team approved. The attacks on the people of Puerto Rico, calling Puerto Rico, which is, of course, part of America, friends, a floating island of garbage. And he says this. I want you to listen to this formula. His formula, it's like Mad Libs. You know Mad Libs, that game? Because it's a pun for ad lib. When you ad lib, you kind of make things up. Well, Mad Libs was and still is a game that you played on paper. And, we played it when we were kids. It's still around. And if you're the person listening, someone else looks at the pad of paper and it's got a paragraph. And there are things that are blanks left out, words left out. And you say, can you pick an adjective? And someone says blue. And then you say, can you pick a verb? And the other person says running. Can you pick a noun? And you might say, looking out the window, lake. And then the person who's writing the notes down fills in all the blanks and then reads it out loud. And the more outrageous the words are that you fill in, the funnier the story is. Well, Donald Trump's entire method, whenever someone says, why did you criticize the Jews? Or why did you criticize these immigrants? Or why did you not do this thing? He says, no one has done more for the blank people than I have. That's just what he says. It doesn't matter. He just has that template. It's like person, woman, man, TV, or whatever his so-called cognitive test was. Let's play that again.
And I can't imagine it's a big deal. I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president I think that's ever been president.
I think it's person, woman, man, camera, TV, but he's just going to say that. Okay, so now let's pivot away from how great Kamala Harris did bringing home her message of unity and shared prosperity to what is in store for us, more of what is in store for us if Donald Trump is elected. This is what he created. So there is another tragic story in ProPublica. They are the independent news organization with Pulitzer Prize winning reporters and incredible investigators and writers. And ProPublica had put out the story about Amber Thurman, the young woman in Georgia who lost her life because of the Trump abortion ban. In here, we have a similar situation. We here have a young woman, and her name is Josely Barnica. And here she is with her beautiful child, but she was denied assistance. She was having a miscarriage and the hospital refused to intervene. This is a story you must read in ProPublica. I'm only giving you part of it. This was written by Cassandra Jaramillo and Kavith Sarana, and it was published this morning. And this is a series that ProPublica is doing about how Trump abortion bans lead to preventable deaths. And what they do is they take a story. They take a incident and they talk to medical experts to see whether intervention would have saved her life. And let me just read this to you. It is tragic. Josely Barnica grieved the news as she lay in a Houston hospital bed on September 3rd, 2021. The sibling she dreamed of giving her daughter would not survive this pregnancy. I'm just trying to take that in, right? The fetus was on the verge of coming out, its head pressed against her dilated cervix. She was 17 weeks pregnant and a miscarriage was in process. Right? This is before viability, and this is a tragedy. Doctors noted this in hospital records. At that point, they should have offered to speed up the delivery or empty her uterus to stave off a deadly infection. And this is what more than a dozen medical experts told ProPublica. But when Josely Barnica's husband rushed to her side from his job on a construction site. She relayed what she said the medical team had told her. They had to wait until there was no heartbeat. This is what he told ProPublica in Spanish. It would be a crime, they told him, to give her an abortion. And so, for 40 hours, Josele Barnaca, this anguished 28-year-old mother, prayed for doctors to help her get home to her daughter. All the while, her uterus remained exposed to bacteria. 3 days later, after she delivered this stillborn child, Barnaca died of an infection. This is what Donald Trump brought us. This is what we warned when people I knew said, "Oh, what's the big, well, let's give Trump a chance," or what's the worst thing that could happen? This is the worst thing that could happen, and it gets worse from here, friends. Now, let me pivot for a second to something else I'm annoyed about before we get to Crazy Town. You and I, we've been talking about the certain newspapers, and I talked about at the beginning of the show, including the Washington Post, which is now dominated by Jeff Bezos, the owner of the Post, who we know shut down the Washington Post this year from doing what it has always done every 4 years, which is endorse a candidate for the top of the ticket. It's for the presidency. The Post still was able, the editorial board still endorsed other candidates, but they didn't this time because he stood in the way. He banned it. And this is a follow the big dirty money story. I want to share with you Lindy Lee explaining this on Newsmax. Here you go.
Capitulation on the behalf of extremely wealthy business tycoons who understand they have business contracts. In fact, Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, has a $3.4 billion contract with NASA that he doesn't want to jeopardize. And the LA Times owner has had a long-standing relationship with Trump that he doesn't want to undermine as well. So these people are looking at the polls and they're understandably nervous that Trump will return to power, and they're going to find themselves on the wrong side of the aisle. So what they did was cowardly, absolutely cowardly and reprehensible. But they're doing it to protect their business interests at the expense of our republic.
Exactly. These people, these oligarchs, only care about their own power and their own domination and their own ability to pull the strings. Think about Elon Musk kind of wanting to be the shadow president. And this isn't about what side of the aisle they're on. This is about what side of the balance sheet they care about growing. And that is the asset side. That is a fact of the matter. Okay, guys. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is a time as we wrap up the show for Crazy Town. And today in Crazy Town, of course, it has to be Donald Trump. And I got for you something super crazy that he had to say. And, I will play this, and if you need to watch it twice, so be it. Here we go. Oops. I did not pull that up on stage properly. Let's do it. Okay.
Buses, all of them bussing people because they couldn't get anybody to show up for her tonight. I didn't bus anybody. You're all here. This place is
Donald Trump is actually claiming that Kamala Harris didn't have a large crowd. Friends, I'm starting to really get into this crowd size. So let's look, Donald.
Thank you, everyone.
Friends, does that look like a group of people who were bussed in, sitting around, kind of languid, waiting for the event to end, and then being abandoned in the desert like he did for people at Coachella? No. That was a crowd of 75,000 people. And I just want you to visualize something for me. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. So did Joe Biden. So does every Democratic president this century. And when they run, and here's the deal. Canada, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say every, let me just be very careful about this. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, and so did Joe Biden. But the reason why Hillary Clinton lost the election is because of the battleground states, around 77,000 voters across 3 states. Visualize, if you will, that crowd. That is the number of people we're talking about. It's huge for a crowd, but it is a drop in the bucket for a nation of more than 300 million people. It's a drop in the bucket for a situation where we probably will have 160 million people vote. We got some problems with the Electoral College. On the next show, I can talk about how it can be fixed and is being fixed without a constitutional amendment. Yes, my friends, that will be a deep dive, a legal deep dive. But the bottom line is Joe Biden also won the popular vote. But the reason why he won the election across those battleground states, he had 50,000 more. That's less than that crowd. Think about that. Every vote counts. Every phone call you can make matters. Every group text where you remind people it's time to vote. Please share the message of hope and unity. Share the message of shared prosperity. And let's go into this with our full hearts and our full minds. And I think we can win it. It's going to be close, but let's at least fight, because when we fight, we win. See you tomorrow morning, guys.